Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Draftstars NFL Show for Week 5 of Daily Fantasy Action. My name is Smatho, and here's Makeda Guy. Welcome to our viewers who are watching the stream or watching the replay. Good to have you with us. And also good to have Draftstars on board as Australia's #1 daily fantasy platform for your NFL daily fantasy. Wherever you're a new participant or been playing for years, Draftstars are your place to go to play your NFL daily fantasy. Hello, Tom. How you going, buddy?
Morning, Smatho. Doing well, thanks. You?
Yeah, good to hear. Yes, good to hear. Last week wasn't so much a great time for me. I only played a couple of lineups last week, and there was a couple of players that we did spruik, and I didn't decide to play them. So nothing for me last week. But how did you go?
Yeah, not great. Kind of middle of the pack mostly.
All right, well, let's give a little shout out to our winner from week 4 before we look into week 5. This is a JP4_3 who scored an immaculate 250 fantasy points here on Draftstars to take out the $50,000 contest for week 4. $4,935 for his first prize there. We did talk up a few of these guys last week, including DJ Moore and Tyreek Hill and obviously Derrick Henry, but Cordell Patterson at the min price for 34.6. You needed him if you want to make cash last week. So how'd you fare last week?
Yeah, I was surprised Patterson got up to 20% ownership there. He obviously popped a bit in the projections. Yeah, I think Jalen Hurts is interesting. We've seen him in the winning lineup at least a couple of times already. Stacked with Dallas Goedert there, which we talked up a little bit, I believe. Dallas Goedert. But yeah, pretty hard to get away from Tyreek Hill and Deebo Samuel, who've both done it twice already as well. So just going back to the well, it seems.
Yes, because Tyreek Hill had been down for a couple of weeks, and I remember you saying he's carrying a little bit of an injury. So I'm not sure you were trying to throw the scent off for a few people, but who didn't throw the scent off was Stimpy there, who actually just absolutely nailed his mass injuries there with combinations of Patterson, Henry, Deebo Samuel, and Tyreek Hill. So that appeared in pretty much every one of his lineups, and that literally just printed money. As we check out the player board, last week's most selected players included, obviously, Derrick Henry at 50%. So obviously we're looking at that kind of ownership again this week. Deebo Samuel was in a great spot, left untouched, and that touchdown from Trey Lance. So that's how he boosted his score up there. And obviously the cheapies we talked about, which was Trey Sermon and Zach Moss. Look, they did okay at the end, but it was Cordell Patterson at the min price at 34.6. That's the play that you needed last week.
Yeah, and obviously that's just kind of variance in daily fantasy sports. Just he's not going to catch 3 touchdowns very often. And Zach Moss could have very easily scored another 1 or 2 the way that game went. So, yeah, just happens. And on a different day, we could have been right.
Yes, on a different day. 50% Henry. That's probably the key that you have to think about this week. All right, so shout out to you, JP. Welcome. I'll see you be back in for week 5 action, which is pretty good. Now, obviously, question for you, Tom, before we look into the week 5. We've got 4 weeks of data now that we can look upon, which is obviously your fantasy scores, your matchups, things like DVOA, which means you can rate how good an offensive line is against a defensive line. And then obviously injuries are now starting to bite. So now that you've got a little bit of background in terms of what the teams are doing through 4 weeks, has that changed your style of DFS play, or you still narrowing down to 1 or 2 factors?
Yeah, I pretty much just like to rely on projections as much as I can. For a lot of sports, I build my own, but NFL, there's so many projections out there, and they build all that stuff in. Hello, who we got there? Yeah, so projections kind of build all that stuff in generally, so I try not to double count it too much. Yeah, and one other thing I'm changing a little bit this week, which is mostly based on what we saw from Stimpy with that very tight player pool dominating last week, is just to try to kind of use the favourites like you suggested last week and bring the pool a little bit tighter.
How big is your pool? Like, if you're making your 100 plus lineups, like how many players are you considering?
Oh, too big most weeks, nearly anyone.
Are we talking 3 figures?
Could be close sometimes, but I don't think
Oh,
it's a good idea. I think it's better to back yourself and narrow it down as much as you can anyway, without being too crazy.
geez, you need like an Olympic-sized swimming pool if you're going to be playing that kind of amount of players. All right, let's get stuck into week 5. Now, obviously, not much on in terms of the daily fantasy space here in Australia at the moment. We've got a bit of cricket going on, and some horse racing, which is fine to fill in the time. But yeah, you want to be a part of this $50,000 prize pool from Draftstars, a $15 entry fee, $4,935 first prize. 4 a.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Savings start. Only the 12 games on this slate because we do have a game in London. So Draftstars have provided a little flex contest around, I think it's 12:30 in the morning here on the Eastern Seaboard. So you can get stuck into that. So obviously we've got the 8 games early, the 4 games late, 4 a.m. start. Now, before we get into the fantasy players, let's check out the betting board for this one. Now, obviously, it's not exactly a great slate because obviously with all the good games on prime time, they've left us with the scraps, and one of those scraps shows us there are a couple of games under the 40-point total and only a couple over the 50. So when you have these particular type of slates where you don't have your massive guns playing, what are you looking for straight away?
Yeah, I think it just means that the ownership might be spread out a bit more instead of concentrated on any particular game. The Cowboys as big favourites in the highest total game, I guess they'll get some attention. Yeah, there's not much else there, is there? Everything else is pretty tight. So I guess just mostly just looking to stay away from the lowest total games.
Yeah, those games. Yeah, look at that. The Steelers and the Broncos with a 1-point spread, but 39.5 is tough to get excited about. Also, that Patriots Texans as well. If Patriots get out to a big lead early, what does that happen to your fantasy side? So, again, you'd probably be looking at those last 4 games of the slate. They seem to be more appetizing than the earlier games. But I think the main point that you want to look at this week is the injuries. We're now 4 weeks in. There's some significant injuries throughout the teams. So if I bring up the latest ones that we have today, we're starting to get more players in the out column than in the questionable column now. So Julio Jones, David Montgomery, George Kittle are probably the main 3 big ones there on this particular slate, and that have implications for daily fantasy. Gronkowski, Shepard, and Slayton, they're still out. Christian McCaffrey, there was talk of him playing, but he is now more doubtful than probable. Now, the questionable guys include Edmonds, Joe Mixon, which we'll talk about shortly, Sutton, TJ Hawkinson, Dalvin Cook, Samuel, Amari Cooper, Devontae Parker, Danny Amendola, Peyton Barker. And the guys who are a problem, who are likely to play, include Elliott, Swift, Bridgewater, Melvin Gordon, Antonio Gibson, and Gio Bernard. So this is going to be a bit of a theme for your time for the next few weeks. How injuries now have fantasy implications out of those guys who are having your attention.
Well, there's nothing huge, but we've got Damian Williams will be starting running back for the Bears with Montgomery out. He could be interesting. Obviously, Trey Lance, I think, is the biggest one starting for the 49ers. And then there's a few others. Kadarius Toney, we saw he looked pretty good last week, actually, after kind of being skeptical about him before the season. So Shepard and Slayton are still out. He could still have a pretty big role. And then like Chubba Hubbard and Cameron Brate both didn't do a lot with their chance last week, but they get another one this week. So those are the main ones. In the questionables, there's not much there. Obviously, we're waiting to see what happens with Joe Mixon, but it looks like he'll play. So that's the most important one, I think. And you forgot our bets, Smatho.
I was going to say, I reckon I've got to get a few comments here saying, "Where's your bets, boys?" Right. I think I got mine up. I can't recall what I bet last week, but I do recall that one. Who are you looking at for that particular slate? I know there's not many. That's not as we're not exactly enthusiastic about that betting board, but is there one for us?
Yeah, I had to make sure we got it in, given I'm 4 from 4. Good call on the Cardinals last week, but yeah, not as excited this week. But I'm going for Washington, $2.25 against the Saints. Just have a bit of belief in Taylor Heineke and the defense at Washington to come good.
Yeah, my boy Taylor. Yeah, I'm gonna tell you there. I do like the Washington football team, but I'll take about the spread for that one because I'm a soft boy. All right, enough about being soft. Let's get into this slate. So, $50,000 slate. As always, we'll start through every position on the slate, and we are starting here with quarterback. So as we talked about, not many studs this week, but obviously Kyler Murray does lead the crop there at 16,380. And then you've got your pocket passes in Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, and some extent Dak Prescott are just below him. Herbert, Burrow's in a great matchup against the Packers at 14,090. And then it goes down from there. So let's start with Kyler Murray. He's going to be popular. He's got a fantastic dual threat running game, passing game. But a couple of games just there at the 22. Does that concern you?
Doesn't concern me so much. Like I think that's possibly his floor at the moment, almost, which is a good thing. But obviously, at his price, you want a little bit more than that. So, it's not the easiest matchup. You don't have to play him, but I still think he's very much in play.
Now, he's going up against the 49ers, who have lost Jimmy Garoppolo this week. So in comes Trey Lance, who came onto the field last week and produced 20 fantasy points in 2.5 quarters, including that large touchdown to Deebo Samuel. 11,940. You've written him up in your article on Daily Fantasy Rankings. So it's a great price, but is the matchup worry you?
Not so much worried about the matchup because I think they will have to try to keep up with the Cardinals, most likely. I don't think they'll have him in kid gloves or anything. But yeah, there has been some Kyle Shanahan comments that he's not quite ready to be the starter yet. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see if they let him kind of use all of his talents running and deep balls and everything. But yeah, he's cheap enough that I think he's kind of it's good to play him before he gets more expensive.
Yeah, no, it is a good price there at 19,009. My boy last week, he went off 27.9, game-winning touchdown to McKissick down the sideline, which is a bit of a sight to behold, and his price has dropped down to 11,710. Tougher matchup against the Saints. Injuries are starting to bite. They don't have Logan Thomas, but it's hard to ignore that price for Taylor Heineke.
It is, and the Saints have been brutal against running back so far, so I think all the play has to go through Heineke. They're a little bit limited, but they get Curtis Samuel back, they're just going to have to try to throw the ball. So there's still the potential there for him to put up another kind of mid-20s total, which could be enough at that price.
Now, before I scroll back up to the top of the page, is there any of these guys down here that you could pivot off in tournament play?
Yeah, I mean, I think Daniel Jones is in play. That's the highest total game. He's already had a couple of big games. Seems to be a little less turnover prone this year. Cowboys defense is actually better than expected this year, but if he has to chase, it won't matter. He'll be putting the ball in the air, so there's potential for him to go big again.
Yep. I do like Jones this week. That's a good price as well. As we scroll back up, we talked about Murray, but Dak Prescott in Aussie in that game as well at 14,430. Starting to build 27 last week, 4 touchdowns with only 188 passing yards. So if this becomes the potential shootout, 14,430 seems to be a good price for Dak.
Yeah, I think he'll be popular, but I don't know. I'm feeling a bit skeptical about the way the Cowboys are playing. They're kind of, last year we saw them just going nuts before Dak got injured, throwing 400, 500 yards a game. That's just not happening this year. So, yeah, I think he's a good play, but I think if he gets some ownership, there could be some better options.
All right. Any other options before we move on? It's not exactly a great crop, but a tight crop, I suppose.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of interesting guys in the kind of mid-range, like Darnold, Hurts, maybe Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields. They're all, I'm surprised that Hurts got cheaper after what we've seen from him so far. And obviously Darnold has been really good too. So,
I mean, the dude's he's rushing in touchdowns. That's what Darnold's getting his points from. Look, sure. Look at those 300 yards are getting him a bonus 3 points as well. So,
yeah, he is, but the team's going well, and if he's not running in the touchdowns, then he's probably going to throw them in. So, yeah, I don't expect a huge drop off from him. I think him and Hurts, especially, are pretty solid players at those prices.
Yeah, no, I like these prices. Like, if you're not playing Murray, you'll probably be stepping down to these guys down here below that 12, 13K mark. So, let's see how you go with them. All right. Running back. King Henry, $18,140. Those cheap prices are long gone. Can we afford him? Or is he, because McCaffrey is obviously not going to play. Look, he probably wanted to, but is unlikely. And Dalvin Cook is still also questionable too. So that's a late night for you tonight. But 18,140 against the Jaguars, which is, yes, it is a good matchup that could get it to an early lead. But the Titans lost last week. So what's going to happen with Henry?
Yeah, well, hopefully we don't see 50% ownership again.
No.
But you never know. I don't know. It's easy to say, recency bias. He's going too well at the moment to ignore him. But yeah, that price is just enough to scare me. I think sprinkle him in, but just don't go too nuts.
Yeah. Having him involved in the passing game with the Titans, losing majority of their receivers. Look, they do get AJ Brown back this week, so that could spread the targets away from Henry, but he can't ignore those 100 plus rushing yard games that he's had. And he's only scored 4 touchdowns, and 3 of them came against the Seahawks. So that's a pretty good floor, without being touchdown dependent. So his ceiling could be up towards that 45-50 like as he did in the Seahawks. So yeah, but that ownership scares me. If he was 50% last week at a little bit of a cheaper price, look, it won't be 50% again, but he's going to be the highest owned. So definitely for your cash / double ups, head-to-heads, etc. But I'm going to get away from him in tournaments. If I'm going to play like 3 or 4 lineups, I might have 1 out of 4 or 1 out of 5. Like scary fade. I might just have 1 just in case. Probably I'll throw a cash line in a GPP, see what happens there. But yeah, I want to see him bust. Let's be honest.
Yeah, I did say in my article, Tannehill, AJ Brown, Derrick Henry stack is in play because he is getting some passing work this year, and maybe he catches a screen and takes it 80 yards or something. But yeah, need to be a bit thoughtful about not just jamming him in too heavily.
Now, question for you: How many catches that Kamara caught last week?
I'm guessing it's very low. I'm not sure.
Not sure. 0.
0. There we go.
0. What a way to go about. that price
Yeah,
is still too
it's
much.
hard to understand what's going on there. You used to, sometimes you'd get 10 plus in previous seasons, and it's just not. Don't know. The offense just is weird at the Saints these days. They're not using Jameis Winston. They're trying to use him like Drew Brees, and he's not Drew Brees. So, yeah, it's hard to know what to think of that team.
Okay. All right. We'll come back up to the top of the board here. The one question that we want to ask you is the min price on Joe Mixon. So there he is at 8,000. He is still questionable for the Bengals with his injury. But as you can see, he had a 28-point performance in week 1 with 4 receptions and 120 plus rushing yards. So if he's fit to play, is he in your teams? And how many of your teams is going to be in your teams?
Sounds like it will play. I can't really answer that question yet. Like, it's unfortunate that he's minimum price because you pretty much have to consider him, and he will be pretty popular, you'd imagine. But yeah, it's a hard one because you don't know if he'll get anywhere near a full workload. I doubt he will, and yeah, it could be a rough game against the Packers. Even though you can run on the Packers a little bit, if they get out to an early lead, he might have very little work to do. Yeah, so I guess play him, but don't go too heavy on him.
Don't go too overboard. All right, fair enough. What about other options on the board here? Alvin Kamara. So we've already talked about him. Saquon Barkley's been pretty good. Had the great. He's getting targets. That's the thing that should spark your interest there. 5 targets last week. We're receiving touchdown. That was a really good touchdown that he scored last week, which boosted his score. So he's at 15,520. Aaron Jones in obviously a great matchup against the Bengals. He's at 15,400. Austin Eckler's starting to get more involved at 32 points last week, 15,370 against the Browns, who look are one of the best defensive teams in the league. And then Zeke Elliott, who's in the probable side, he's there at 14,350. And the last one there's actually a couple more I want to talk about here. Najee Harris at 14,310. He's still just getting targets from Big Ben. DeAndre Swift is one to keep an eye out for because obviously their injuries are biting at the Lions. He's still involved in the passing game. And then the one I actually want to talk about is Leonard Fournette. You've written him up on DFR. We do have what's his name from the Bucs. He's returning, but 16 points against the Patriots last week. Seemed to be playing every bloody snap for the Bucs. Brady loves him. Good price. What are your thoughts?
Is it Gio Bernard that's coming back?
That's right, Gio. Yep.
Right. All right. I wasn't sure if he was in or not, but yeah, this is like Montgomery last week, who I talked up, but I didn't actually didn't want to like him. Similar with Fournette, we saw from the box score there he hasn't done anything incredible just yet. But yeah, he has kind of taken over most of the work in that backfield. And the Dolphins, I just love targeting the Dolphins with running backs. So that's kind of the gist of that play. A lot of it depends on if the Bucs kind of throw in their touchdowns or run them in. Yeah, if Gio Bernard's back, I'm a little bit less excited about that.
Yeah, there's a lot of mouths to feed at the Bucs in there. You got 3 stud wide receivers. You got Fournette and Bernard. Look, no Gronk, but yeah, it's 11,700 is a bit of a tease for me, considering what he was doing last week. So that's him there. One also I want to talk about is Williams. I've got him in my notes here, and he was pretty cheap as well.
I think he's 11 something.
11, there he is, 11,620 for the Bears. Box score's not that great, but with no Montgomery, I've already touched on that as well. But that price, is it okay, or is that a bit too much?
Yeah, I think he's very similar to Fournette, where you like the role, matchup's not too bad, price is borderline, but just not sure about the ceiling with him as well. Like could easily do it. I think we saw him do it a few times in his Chiefs days. Yeah, not a huge amount of confidence, but he's definitely in play.
All right. So what I think will happen this week, a lot of people pick Henry with Mixon as their duos. So if you want to get away from that, look to these mid kind of guys in the 14,000, 15K range, and maybe possibly someone a bit lower down here that you can find. Chuba Hubbard at 9,920 has potential if McCaffrey is not good to go. All right, let's move on. Wide receiver. Devonta Adams, again, leads the slate here at 17,410. Didn't get going last week. Didn't need to against the Steelers. Only did 6 catches for 64 yards. If the Bengals can keep going, I reckon he's a great play. What are your thoughts on Adams this week?
Yeah, I like it. Not at that 19.5 or whatever he was last week. So yeah, he's in play. He's 40 plus ceiling type guy. And off a bad week, maybe we get a bit of a discount in ownership. Yeah, fire him up.
Yeah, fire him up. Now, if we're going to be playing Titans against the Jaguars, we talked about AJ Brown there. He's back after his hamstring injury at 12,780. As you can see, with all the rest of the Titans, there's just no one else. Chester Rogers there at 6'4". Westbrook is actually questionable there at 6'4" as well. They've got no one to throw it to. So 12,780, is he in your pool?
Yeah, big time. I'm a bit of a fanboy for AJ Brown. Obviously, yeah, has struggled with that hamstring a bit. So hopefully he's close to full fitness. Practice reports pretty encouraging, I think. And the matchup obviously really good. So yeah, hopefully he stays healthy, gets all the volume, and yeah, we know he's got the big plays in him. So yeah, jump on while the price is down and people are a bit scared of the injury. Hopefully,
fire him up. Now, if you're playing Trey Lance in your teams, Deebo Samuel's there at 14,100. Seems to be the only guy on everyone's radar. 38 last week, along with a 34. Deebo Samuel, fire him up.
Yeah, why not? Not going to go too crazy on him with the price increase this week, but yeah, he's a good stacking partner for Lance. I will say you can probably play Lance naked if you want to. He's just cheap enough and has the running game to do that.
All right. Back towards the top of the board here, DeAndre Hopkins at 16,400. Hasn't got going in this Cardinals offense with the ball's been spread around everywhere. Jefferson's there at 15,950 against Detroit in a good matchup. Evans, CeeDee Lamb, I want to talk about. CeeDee Lamb's at 14,830. I talked about Dak before. He's going to be one of my players in my pool there. 3.3, 9.5 in his last 2 games. What's going on with the Cowboys is the highest game total here is still priced up pretty high. You reckon his ownership would be low due to his recent work?
Yeah, I think it probably will. I mean, it's hard to not be scared of those numbers there. I think the thing with the Cowboys is the defense is better this year, and they can kind of rely on running the ball and slowing the opposition down a bit more than they used to be able to. So they don't have to go nuts in the passing game. So yeah, I like him. I like his ability. Price is kind of about right, I guess. So yeah, it's probably a gut feel thing. But yeah, he's probably the best stacking option with Dak.
I reckon that most people, if you had a choice between CeeDee Lamb and DJ Moore, who would you choose?
Yeah, DJ Moore. Yeah, I'm a big fan of what the Panthers are doing, so hard to get away from that.
Yeah, hard to get away. So that makes me like CeeDee Lamb even more, which is pretty good. Tell me about some cheap guys here, because on a slate where these guys are good, but they're not exactly huge megastars here. Talk about some cheapy guys here on this particular slate.
Yeah, it gets pretty dusty, but in my article I talked about Darnell Mooney, who he's a pretty promising second-year player for the Bears, and we saw they kind of unleashed Justin Fields last week, let him throw the ball downfield a lot more, and it was Mooney that was on the end of that. Still cheap, still very cheap given what we saw last week, and didn't even score a touchdown then, so has even more ceiling than that. I think he's probably the best of the lot. There's a few more there. Osborne, Cobb, Christian Kirk, Rondale Moore are a few that stood out as kind of similar price range, decent matchup, and they've shown a little bit this year. Like it's not something you can have huge confidence in, but they do have the potential to pay off that price.
Yeah, they're all nicely good value plays, but like Rondale Moore's at 7,780.
Yeah, they could all give you 2 points, or they could give you 22 points, but not much in between, maybe.
Not much in between. Obviously, if I cancel this and if I go towards the 11, 10K guys, Odell Beckham continues to burn me. He only had the 5 last. Apparently, he had a lot of targets. Just Baker Mayfield just can't find him at the moment. So he could be a really good tournament play if you think that that gets out in a bit of a shootout with the Chargers. Kadarius Toney as well. He got 13.9 nice, but that price at 10,000. You'd rather play the 8, 7K guys and take a shot on them than paying the 10K for him. So, Hunter Renfrow. He's pretty of a darling of the showdown slate. So that's not a bad price on old Hunter there. I mean, he's been getting red zone work too. So 9,230. Any more before we move on?
No, I think that's about it with the receivers. Yeah.
All right. Tight end. Oh boy, this is going to be tough. So Kittle's done. He's out. DJ Hawkinson is questionable, borderline doubtful now. And then it just drops away because obviously Darren Waller is there at 14,370. Look, he is one of the Raiders' most popular guys, but hasn't really got on fire since the Baltimore game in week 1. And then, it's not a lot down after here. So, starting Waller, why would you pay him $14,000 for Darren Waller?
Well, I guess just because we have seen kind of big high 30s ceiling games from him before. And it is a pretty good matchup. The Bears secondary isn't very good. So, he's had 3 quiet weeks. It could be his turn to go big again. And then, after that, we probably should just say best of luck and move on. But there are a few there. Dalton Schultz has been good. Looks like his role has grown significantly. I think Noah Fant and Mike Gesicki both have kind of safety blanket roles for their quarterbacks. Maybe doesn't equate to a big ceiling, but you don't necessarily need that at tight end. You just need someone who can score a touchdown and get 5 or 6 catches and double up their price. And then Evan Engram is the one that I think, he's been really bad for a couple of years, but before that, he had a really big ceiling. And it looks like, with those Giants injuries, he could have the role that he used to have again.
Now, I've got a couple for you, a little bit cheaper than that. I've got here Dan Arnold at 5,700. Obviously, he moved across from the Panthers. If he can get on a bit more targets and better red zone work against the Titans, he's pretty cheap there at 5,700. And then Ricky Seals-Jones, obviously with Logan Thomas out. If my boy Taylor decides to keep chucking it and finding anyone he can find down the field, then Ricky could be in for a nice little game there. 2 receptions for 19 yards last week. Logan not out there, so at 5,560. As I said, these are dart throws. I mean, if you're not playing Waller, you're just crossing your fingers. Look, I do like Schultz and I do like Gesicki. They have more of a established role in their offenses, so they just got pretty crappy matchups, to be honest.
Yeah.
So
you can have Ricky Seals-Jones. I'll stay away, but if he gets up, we'll have celebration next week.
Oh, well, all right, you're on. Now, defense, special teams. Again, Draftstars are doing a great job. New England Patriots, 8,010 against the Texans. Look, I don't want to say bias it comes in, but they're in my pool. I think if I could pay down for a really cheapy tight end, I can afford a couple of extra $1,000 for the Patriots. Steelers, I think they're overpriced, so I do like your Broncos. At 5,940. If they can pressure Big Ben again, who is literally a statue, I mean, a couple of sacks, a couple of interceptions could be good.
Yep, I'm definitely hopeful for the Broncos. I'm going to say that I'm happy to feel the bias towards the Patriots after what the Bills did to the Texans last week. I'm almost tempted to push the lock button on the Patriots, but I won't do that.
Yeah.
But yeah, with Davis Mills at quarterback, they are truly, truly terrible. And it's hard to see how the Patriots don't rack up some points on them.
Now, it goes against my will here, but the Titans here are in play at 5,870, especially if Trevor Lawrence continues to chuck interceptions. And Washington is also there for me at 5,130. I backed him in last week. And they got a couple of sacks and a return TD, which was quite nice, but we haven't seen their real defense come out as yet. So I'm going to bank him in at 5,130. Anyone below that 5K mark? Because I'm not really vibing these guns down here.
No one I like, but I was going to mention the Texans as a complete kind of 180 on my Patriots love.
Yeah.
That's a low total game, and Patriots do have a rookie quarterback as well in Mac Jones, who has committed some turnovers in earlier games. So, if that game just goes completely sideways and neither team can score, maybe the Texans somehow get there. But yeah, I'm not necessarily saying I think it's likely, but I think that's kind of a leverage play if the Patriots are the popular choice.
All right. So that's position by position for week 5. So it's now time for the party pool. All right, this week I haven't gone too far away from last week. So Prescott, Hurts, Trey Lance, Taylor Heineke, and Kyler Murray. I'm a quarterback pool. King Henry, Lenny, Harris, and Swift. Hopefully they get up from the injuries. Also, Williams. Mixon with a star there. We've got to check his status as well. Mooney for the Bears. AJ Brown, Curtis Samuel, Deebo Samuel, DJ Moore, Adams, Lamb, and Devontae Smith if you're going to have a Hurts little stack there. Tight end, you got to go with Waller, Gesicki, Seals, Jones, and Arnold. My flyers there. And then the Patriots, Titans, Washington, and the Broncos are my defense special teams for this week. So, final thoughts for you, Tom. Also, you got a bit of hard work for this week.
Yeah, hopefully we see a much lower winning score. None of that 250 madness. Other than that, just go the Broncos and let's go Washington.
Let's go Washington. Let's get on them. All right, Tom, thanks for joining me this week for the Draftstars NFL Show for week 5. Look forward to having your company for week 6. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Smatho. Yeah, it was a good one. I'll see you next week.
See you next week. Thanks for our viewers. Leave a like as you go out, and we'll catch you for week 6. Catch you then.
Yeah.